Hello, I'm back for our last card for the card class today, and this is going to be our technique card, and we're going to do some watercoloring on die cuts. And I said I was going to use all three papers from Celebration, and this is the Dainty Flowers paper. Unfortunately, this paper is gone. I can't say sold out because it was free, but it is all gone out of stock. So I guess that must have been everybody's favorite, because it was so pretty. Anyways, I do have some left, so if you didn't get any and are disappointed that you missed out, let me know, and we'll see what we can do about that. And I'll get started with our watercoloring project. Now, that Dainty Flowers paper went along with the Dainty Delight bundle. And of course, since it was so popular, the dies are also out of stock, but they will be coming back in a few weeks. So you can keep your eyes out. The Dainty Delight dies will be back, and you can see there's all sorts of little flowers and leaves and fun things that you can cut out. And that's what I've got in everybody's kit today is those Dainty Flowers dies. And while I'm in here, I'm going to get out the Celebrating You stamp because I forgot to get that out and put it on a block. So I did want to mention that if you can't wait, the Honeybee Home stamp set, and it's a bundle as well with flower dies, is very similar in style, and I like that just as well. And it also has these cute little honeybees too, and there's dies to cut those out as well. So that's another option. So let me grab a block here. I can grab one from my hello from the last class and get that Celebrate You up there. And I do want to stamp my vellum first because vellum just takes a little while to dry. I tried using StazOn too, and my StazOn took just as long to dry as the Memento black ink. So I think either of them will be fine. Just give it a little dry time. So I'm going to stamp that right on my vellum in the center, and then set that aside for a minute to dry. And then we'll get started with the watercoloring. So I'm using the water pens, water painters that we have in the catalog. They come as a set of 3 with 3 different widths. So I'm using the medium one today. And I get tired of trying to push the water down on these. So if you're like me and are a little impatient, then just grab a little container of water to dip it in. I've just got a little embellishment container here, so I'll be using that. And let me get the rest of my pieces out. I die cut for the kits some of the die cuts out of watercolor paper. Not only is it easier to watercolor on watercolor paper, the paper is more forgiving and there's more movement, but it also is a little thicker paper, so it makes it, gives it a little more texture and a little bit more ability to stand out, and especially since there's such fine die cuts. So I'm gonna, when I'm watercoloring, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and put some paper towel under here just so I don't get too much water going around. So I'm just gonna wet the watercolor paper to start out with, just to make it easier for the color to spread around. And I think I was using for my sample Rich Raspberry and Old Olive. So grab those ink pads. Now if you have strong hands, you can push down on the center of your ink pads and get a little ink onto the cover. Or if you're like me and your hands aren't quite as strong, you can just put a couple drops of re-inker onto your lid, or even grab again one of your little embellishment containers and or even a stamp block and put a couple drops of re-inker. And I did want to mention that we are going to probably be having different colors soon, so some of the colors are going to be retiring, especially the in colors, but some of the other ones as well. So if you don't have the ink refills for your ink pads, I would get them soon. And during Celebration is a great time to do that and get some Celebration freebies. So you don't want to be disappointed when your favorite colors run out of ink. So I'm just going to pick up some of that ink. There's already some there from the last time I did this, and add a little water to it, and then you can always add more color, but it's hard to take away. And just add a little ink to that. And if you want to add different layers, just let them dry in between, especially if you are using different colors that are going to be next to each other, then you definitely want to let them dry in between. I'm just kind of tapping the color on. I want to get a little variation of color, not just all the same color. So add a little more there. So, because if your colors, the watercolor can pull in and kind of bleed in together, and then you get a little bit of muddy colors if you have them next to each other. For this one, I have the two colors in separate pieces, so that just made it a lot easier. And for this particular project, and let's see if I have any. Oh, I guess I'm going to need to add a little more ink to this one. So we'll add a little ink there. And I'm just going to grab the smaller pen so I don't have to clean, but to clean off, just wipe it onto your paper towel. Spread, that's really dark, so I'm going to spread it around a little bit, maybe add a little more water to it, and then just dab on some color. I want to leave a little bit of white space there just to give it a little variation in color. Okay, set those two aside. And again, to clean them, just if you do have a pen that squeezes out the water nicely, you can just keep wiping it there, or just use your little tub of water to clean off those. While it's drying, I might as well clean this one off too. Okay, I've got my pieces there, and my flower and my leaves. This was actually a longer die, and I just kind of trimmed it off a little bit so it would fit on the front of this card. And you can try this paper, if you flip it around, has the watercoloring design on it. So I did not watercolor this paper. That's the Dainty Flowers paper, just the other side of it. But you could do the watercoloring yourself if you wanted to. So you can see they just sort of moved around some of these different colors. Here we have some speckles. So you can be a real artist if you're using watercolor paper. It's a lot, very forgiving and fun to play with. So we have our sheets of watercolor paper come about that size, and they're just fun to play with. Oh, there's another panel of that watercolor paper, and you can see on the back is the cute little dainty flowers. So we're going to use the watercolor side of the paper. So let's start putting things together. Oh, actually, I'm not going to glue the paper on first. I'm glad I thought of that, because I'm going to be using brads to put my vellum on. Now, if it's always a little tricky to adhere vellum because you don't want your adhesive to show through. And if you have, like, if you're using flat embellishments, you could put your adhesive just under where the embellishment is. But I thought I'd go old school and use brads, because we haven't used brads in ages and ages, and we actually have a set in the annual catalog, and they're called round and square brads, and I haven't used them in many eons, so I thought I'd go back to one of the old techniques from before. So I'm going to start actually at the top for assembly. So let me grab my glue, which is right here, and I'm first going to put my watercolor pieces onto my old olive panel, and just put a little dabs of glue under those leaves there. And then I'll put my flower on. I was using up some scraps of watercolor paper to make these, so that was kind of nice to use up all my little scraps. And I'll just lay that right on top like that. Okay, now that can go on top of my designer paper. Okay, and now I'm going to do my brads. So we have this Pierce mat, which you may have seen in the catalog. We've had it for ages, and it's kind of useful if you want a hard surface for stamping on that has a little bit of give. It's hard, yet it has give. So it's good. It's a good stamping surface, but it also is good for paper piecing and all that sort of thing. So if you have a smaller one, it might be a little easier, but I'm going to just use the take your pick tool and try to make a kind of a small hole here, and grab my stamped piece here of vellum, and I'm going to go right in the center of those gaps for both of them. So just make a small little, that worked fine. And then let's see, I did the white squares on this one. Let's see, what'll I do on this one? Maybe I'll make some small black circles. There's small and large of black and white in squares and circles. And then pull those brads apart. Let's see if I can find another small circle in there. That's what I get for choosing a small one. It's a little harder to find. There we go. And then we'll get that together. So going old school with brads, there you go. And then we just have to adhere that whole piece onto the card. And there you go. A little fun watercoloring technique. You can see I have the variation of color in there, and just a nice body with those, using the watercolor paper. So if you haven't had a chance to use watercolor paper before, give it a try and just play with it. You can use some little scraps and just have fun coloring your die cuts for something different to do. So happy crafting, everybody, and hope you enjoyed the projects this month. Everything's posted in the group, and the PDFs are up there as well. So hope you enjoy those. Happy crafting.